Good evening, everyone. Welcome to our program tonight. We are back in session.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Mom's Night In, a weekly show by Faith-Filled Moms. I'm your host, Tanya May Ava, and I'm joined tonight by my lovely co-host, Janice Roll. Hi, Janice.
Hello, Tanya. How are you?
I'm well. How are you?
Good.
Good. I enjoy hosting with you every week.
Yes.
And I have a bit of sad news that we're going to share with our audience tonight. We're going to be missing Janice for a while. She's going to be leaving us for a teaching fellowship, which we're so excited and happy about because Janice is an amazing storyteller and I just enjoy hosting with you. So I am excited and thrilled for you at the same time. It's bittersweet. So we are excited to have this final night, at least for this season, and prayerfully next season you'll be with us. But Janice does more than just co-host. She helps edit our blogs and does a lot of our graphics. So she'll still be around sticking with us. But just make sure you say goodbye to Janice, or so long. We don't want to say goodbye. We say so long just for now. But she's going to be leaving us. We're going to miss her beautiful face for a couple of weeks. But we have a great show tonight.
Yes.
We just wrapped up a great series. Oh my gosh. January was mothers whose children struggle with addiction. Mm-hmm. And we had 3 powerful guests, Tina, Heather, and Dawn. And then we had Dr. Nicole Johnson, as she did even back in October. And we just keep saying, we got to have her back again. She was just amazing. And I just been sharing this, saying, if you missed last week, go back, whether it's on Facebook or YouTube, and just listen to that discussion. It was powerful. And it was really not even about drug addiction, about any type of addictive personality or addictive behavior. She just gave us so much information to help us process it and to work with and live and function with those loved ones that may have, struggling with various types of addiction. So powerful series. Thank you again to all of our guests, and just welcome to those that are with us tonight. I see Carmen May is on. Yes, I think she wins the award probably for the first person to be on and comment every week. She is one of our most faithful viewers. So good evening, Carmen. I see Iris is on as well, another faithful viewer from North Carolina. Hello, Iris. Welcome and good evening to you. Anyone else that is on, please go ahead, jump in, say hello. We know there are guests that are watching that say, I'm not going to say hi, but we know you're there. We just want to say hi to you, and we hope one day you do just pop on. Yep. It brings us so much joy when we see those people for the first time that have been joining us that finally jump in and say hi. So we have another, I don't even know the descriptor to use it. When we originally as a team talked about our next topic, we initially thought we were going to do death of a sibling, and when we got our guests, we determined that it was all of our guests, it was their brother that had passed away. And losing a brother is, I think, uniquely different than losing a sister. There's some differences there. So we were able to change the subject to loss of a brother, and we'll be able to kind of share that experience. And then we said we will have to come back now and do loss of a sister. We will have to feature that in the future as well. But just great guests. Even my own sister is going to come on, I think the 3rd Tuesday in February, and we're going to talk about my brother's passing, which was tough. When we did our pre-conversation, I don't think we were on the call 3 minutes before the tears were rolling down our eyes. So I know each night is just going to be very difficult to get through these topics. But come along with us, join us. It's going to be healing. I know every week there's going to be healing. There's going to be words. If you're grieving, no matter what the nature of the relationship, we know that we are going to have some conversations that's going to bring some healing, some comfort, and just some newness to maybe area that has been dead and hurting. So we're grateful. We've been praying, and we pray that God just moves. So I see my sister Terry is on as well. She's actually going to be a future guest as well. I'm not going to tell you the topic, but we do have a topic coming up that she's going to be a guest on. So we look forward to her joining us as well. So again, hello, if you're joining, just let us know where you're from. We're so excited about tonight. We have a special guest, Janice.
Yes.
Would you care to share who our special guest is tonight?
Yes. So tonight's guest is none other than our extraordinaire Markisha Greene. And Markisha keeps the ball rolling on our Tuesday nights, right? She's looking through the comments. She's posting them on the screen, making sure that our mics are right and video cameras are going well. So we are so excited to have Markisha as a guest here for the second time on this show with this topic.
For the second time. She was one of our initial guests for our cancer series. And it's so funny when she was on the series, she's like, I need the help. You can't do this by yourself. So she was literally my right hand, has been there. So she's our producer extraordinaire. And so she's going to be in front of the screen. So I'm going to be trying to do a bit of her job, a bit of co-host, but I'm going to turn the reins over to Janice. She is going to be running the ship tonight. So let's go ahead and welcome our guest, Miss Markisha Greene. How are you?
I haven't been on this side in what's this, our third season?
2 years. Yeah. Woo! October 2022 was it, I think? Yeah.
I want to say, yeah. Or 21. It might have been 21.
Was it? Wow.
I think
it might have been 21, Tanya.
3 years.
I think it was 21.
So yes, welcome back.
Thank you.
We don't call it the hot seat. It's not hot at all. People are always nervous. Anytime we're nervous, we have to be nervous about our show. This is just girlfriends, and tonight is really girlfriends because we work together so much behind, like we're not on screen. So this is just another time that we are chatting. And so, hi, Sister Vicky is on. Another one of our past guests is on. So welcome. So glad to have you. So glad to have everyone who was on with us tonight. But Markisha, people may know you, but some may not. So I'm going to just ask you to just say your hello, tell people a little bit about yourself, your crazy career that we love to hear about every week. Greetings to the audience.
Well, hello, everybody. As you all know, I am the producer of Faith-Filled Moms. And like they said, I've been here. It's been a minute since I've been here. And yes, Carmen said it was 2021. Yeah. I am a high school chemistry teacher. I'm ready to retire. You know, but I just love these children. I do. I have a good time with them. I've got some stories for you. I am a proud mother of 2 grown, fantastic women. One lives in Baltimore. One lives here in Delaware, still with me. I'm originally from Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, Philadelphia.
Girls High.
Girls High. I'm a Girls High girl. I'm a North Philly girl. And I am a proud member of Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated, as well as Xi Gamma Phi Military Sorority Incorporated.
Yes.
So I do a lot. I, don't know what I want to be when I grow up. So, but that's me in a nutshell.
Yes. And so we actually have your collage tonight. So as we talked about your topic and your conversation that we're going to have tonight is about the loss of your brother Ron. So I did want to put up your collage.
There is Ron.
Yes.
There's Ron.
We will learn a bit more about Ron. But I wanted to just share this graphic before we get into the story. We love to feature pictures regarding our topic for tonight. So as we said, this may be, it is, not saying may, it's going to be difficult. And I think something unique about your story, a lot of times people even ask me, well, does my story have to be good? Does it have to have a happy ending? And I always say, no, it's real. Whatever your story is your story.
Right.
We don't want it all nice in a bow. We just want to hear your story. And I remember when I first read your story, I was like, wow, you know somebody, but you don't always know what they've been through. And I know your story is a difficult one to tell. So first of all, I just want to say thank you for coming and just your courage and being able to share this. Even with the difficult nature, I think, of your story, I still believe in praying that someone is going to receive healing. Everyone doesn't have good relationships with family members.
Yeah, that's what I'm hoping.
And then sometimes people pass and there's unresolved issues and things like that. It's like, well, how do I get through this? Or even, is there guilt for me feeling certain ways that I may feel due to the nature of the relationship when that person was alive as well?
100%. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So again, we're going to get right into it. But we're going to, again, thank you all for joining. Markisha's full story is going to be on our website tomorrow at faithfilledmoms.org. So if you have not done so already, please go ahead and just leave us your email address there. If you do, you'll get our blogs every Wednesday, the day after our Mom Sign In conversation. You'll get the full story of the story that we talk about in our conversation. But you'll also get previews for the upcoming shows. You will send emails about those shows, the topics, and even the links. So you don't have to go on Facebook or YouTube. And where's the link? It'll be right in your email. Just pull your email up, click on it, and it'll take you right to our show. So please, faithfilledmoms.org. And then if you've missed any of our shows, every single blog, every single story, a single conversation is on there. So there's nothing that you would miss. And if you know someone else that has dealt with any of those topics, that we have a menu of all the topics we've done, please, I say it's such a wonderful resource to share for encouragement. So if you know of anyone that's going through any of those topics, please feel free to share our website with them. We just pray that God would just move through our guest stories. So I'm going to open us up in prayer, and then I'm going to hand the reins over to Janice, and we're going to get started. Dear Heavenly Father, God, I thank you once again for bringing us to another Tuesday, another Mom's Night In, Lord. We just thank you for everyone that is gathered on this stream, those that will be watching in the future, Lord. We just invite you into this conversation with Markisha right now, Lord. We just pray that you would just give her your peace that passes all understanding, God. Just help and strengthen her as she tells her story, God, about herself and Ron, Lord. And we just, again, invite you in the midst and just pray that you would get the glory throughout the entirety of her story. We just pray that you would bless all of our technology, that every single part of this story would go forth just as it should. Nothing would be lost, and that you would get the glory tonight. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen. Amen. Well, I'm excited. Like I said, thank you so much, Markisha, for coming in. And just thank you to Tanya for creating this platform. Always reminding people, what Faith Filled Moms is that we are a space that provides biblical and emotional support and resources to bring hope, encouragement, inspiration through difficult seasons in life, because we know that life can be tough sometimes.
Yes.
So Markisha, let's go ahead and jump right in, right? I love how Tanya set it up by saying, everyone's family dynamic is different. So Markisha, can you tell us a bit about your brother and your relationship with him as you grew up, and then the dynamic that you had with your brother and your mother, and how that kind of played into your relationship?
Well, it just in one word, it was complicated. Ron was, I feel like Ron was everything that I wasn't. He was outgoing. He was charismatic. He was the life of the party. He, right off the bat, everybody loved Ron. He had a personality that was bigger than him, and he was a petite guy. To be a guy, he and my father both about 5'6", 5'7". So he was a petite guy, but he had this larger than life personality. And he and my mother were tight. They were each other's best friends. They really were. And a lot of times that left me feeling out, feeling left out. I felt like the third wheel. Sometimes I felt like the Debbie Downer. I didn't, sometimes I didn't get their jokes. Sometimes I was the butt of their jokes. Mm-hmm. Sometimes they would, I felt like they would gang up on me. And it was very difficult to live with them because of how I felt. And so in my family, I was kind of the quiet one. I stayed to myself. I was they called me weird. They called me odd, but I really just didn't feel like I could be my authentic self with them. Like who I am now, I really didn't discover who she was until really I left that house. I left my mom's house. So
that's interesting. And like you said, growing up in a place that you're not really feeling like you can be yourself, can be your true self. And I know from me knowing you and knowing from college, very bright, like, came in chemical engineering, chemistry major. Yeah. So I know, kind of that intellectual, and people can be intimidated even by that as well. So it's interesting that you state that. And I just want to take a moment. I see some additional people I wanted to say hello to. I see Reverend Phyllis Martin. I don't think she joined us before. So if it's your first time, Reverend Martin, welcome. Mm-hmm. She's also a member of our sorority, our Reverend Love
and
sorority.
Yolanda is on.
Yes, our previous guest.
Kim E. Majors, yes, she shouts that out. And I'd like to shout out my soror, Deja Bell Johnson, Dover Alumni Chapter, Delta Sigma Theta Sororities Incorporated.
Thank you for coming. Yeah. We're so happy to see you. And Benita Bell. So it's alumni night tonight. We have a bunch of alumni, a bunch of women who have courageously shared their stories on our show are coming back to support you, Markisha. So I love it. I love it.
Thank you, everybody.
So, I'm sorry, Janice, please proceed.
No, it's absolutely no, it's fine. You know, I do encourage everyone to always read our blogs the next day, right? We only have 60 minutes when we do these calls, and so there are some details that are, you know, more fleshed out in the writing pieces that our guests give. And in your blog, Markisha, you spoke about an incident where you and your brother had an altercation, and it kind of changed the dynamic of your relationship. Can you go a little bit more deeper about how that altercation really had a major impact with the way that you, your brother, and even your mom kind of started to navigate your lives after that point?
Yeah. So at one point I moved back home. I had been living in Delaware with my two girls. And well, actually I was living in Delaware with my oldest and had moved back when I had my youngest. So I was living in the house, and I was, helping her with her bills, and I was teaching and everything, but it was just a temporary situation for me to move back. I remember one night my mom had gone to get some food. She had went to go get some cheesesteaks. There was a little cheesesteak pizza shop around the corner from where we lived. And he got upset with me about, I really can't even remember what it was. Somebody ate something, or I ate something, or I accused him of eating something in the refrigerator that was mine, which he was notorious for doing. I mean, he's a guy. They reach in the refrigerator, they eat stuff. And he got angry with me. And he at the time he'd been drunk, high. He started to tell me how pathetic I was living there with my two kids. That my mother never really wanted me there, that she told him all the time that she didn't want me there, that I was getting, I had pretty much overstayed my welcome. And so he and I started to argue. We started to go back and forth, and then he smacked me across my face. And me, being the person that I am, I did a whole Sophia thing. Came back around. And we started fighting. And at one point I fell on my youngest daughter. She was probably about 2 or 3 at the time. And I remember screaming for my oldest daughter to grab her and take her to our bedroom and to lock them in, because I didn't know what he was going to do. He ended up getting the better of me. And when my mom came home, I was just about to lose consciousness because he was choking me. And the whole time he was telling me, I was worthless and he was going to kill me. And so when I did get away from him, I called the cops and went to my bedroom and locked myself in. And I could hear, by this time his girlfriend had come over, and I could hear him and my mom talk about, trying to talk him down, trying to calm him down, because he kept saying, I'm sick and tired of her sugar honey iced tea. She thinks she's better than us. She always thinks she's better than us. And she's always thought that. She's not this, she's not that. And, he was coming back up the stairs to come get me, and they had to stop him. So when they found out that the cops were coming, my mother was like, get him out of here. She told his girlfriend, get him out of here, because my brother had issues with the law. And I moved out that night. I moved out that night to my grandmother's house, and I stayed there until I moved back to Delaware in 2005. And I remember thinking how she didn't one time see if I was okay, see if the girls were okay. She didn't, hey, Aunt Del, she didn't really say much. She let me leave. And in fact, she made it seem like I was taking it too personally. I was like, the man, he choked me unconscious. Like, I remember spitting up blood from my throat because it was that bad. And after that, I couldn't be bothered with either one of them. I didn't want to talk to either one of them. I would talk to her because of my kids, but him, I refused to talk to. But I remember being hurt more than anything. That one, he put his hands on me like that. And two, that she didn't do anything. Like she didn't
mom you, right? She didn't.
Right.
Moms are protectors, and she just did not defend.
She didn't
her
do
child.
any of that. She didn't do any of that. My dad, on the other hand, told him, if you ever put your hands on my daughter again, I'll kill you. So my dad, and I've mentioned this to you, Tanya, I never felt that I wasn't loved by my dad. But hey, Zaina Braina. But my mom, it was complicated. I knew she loved me.
Yeah.
But it was really, really difficult to see sometimes. And especially with that incident. Especially with that. That was difficult.
And I've got to echo, I see Yolanda saying you are so brave. And I told you that this is, we talked about it. This kind of story, you often wonder how someone's going to receive it, right?
Right.
And you often wonder what someone's going to think about you when they hear the not so pleasant aspects.
Right. And that's one of the things I was concerned about. I was like, you really want to hear this story? Because it's really not,
but it's somebody else's story. It's, you know what I mean? It's someone's story. It's someone's story that, just like you, they haven't been able to talk about it. They haven't been able to share it, and we're pulling it out. We are talking about it. We're talking about it now. So.
Yeah. And I thank you too so much for your honesty, right? I think oftentimes we get pictures of family that are, a certain way and the feeling is all lovey-dovey. But sometimes family dynamics are complicated, right? And there's layers to it. And so, Markisha, you breaking down the layers is really extremely helpful. I did want to know, obviously this led to being some estranglement between your family, right? Your mother, your brother. You did say you spoke to your mom, but not as frequent as previously as before. What advice can you give to people who may have strained family relationships, right? Who may not be as close to mom as they were when they were children, or don't have a good relationship with their siblings? What kind of advice can you give based upon your experience?
I have to say that that estrangement actually lasted until the day my mother herself passed away. Our relationship really wasn't the same after that. And one of the things that I have learned is that you can carry something in your heart for so long that you don't even realize it's still there. So people would tell me all the time, I hear you talk about your dad all the time, but I rarely hear you talk about your mom. And I had noticed that, because I had gotten to a point where I was like, yeah, she's my mom. She's great to my kids. She was a wonderful grandmother. She would take them for weekends for me so I could get things done. But I would say that I wish that we had gotten help. I would say that I wish that we had recognized what we were doing to each other. Because now that they're both gone, I see how my not talking to them was just as hurtful as, some of the things that they did not do to me, that they did to me, rather. And so I wish that we had found some time to healing. She, we had done that, because when he died and when she died, I did what I did out of obligation and unconditional love,
regardless of feelings, right?
Regardless of feelings,
the pain, regardless of the feelings.
Right. But because we were so estranged, I don't think I think that they thought I didn't love them anymore.
Wow.
And that wasn't the case. I loved them still, but I couldn't love them close up, if that makes sense.
Dr. Nicole talked about it last week about the boundaries, right? And it sounds like you had to place that boundary by moving to Delaware and having that space. That was a boundary that you needed to put in place for yourself to protect yourself, I think, physically, emotionally, mentally, all of those things.
In distance. I had to get the distance. We did so much better when we weren't together. Mm-hmm. We did so much better. But when I look back at it, my mother never saw my house here in Delaware.
Wow.
When I was going through my chemo, I refused to have her see me. Mm-hmm. I didn't want her around, because I just thought that her being around would not help me heal, would not help me get through it.
That healing. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So. I wanted to jump in really quick. I've seen, and I don't know if I've been putting them up on the screen, but I don't know if you saw. I just want to take the time to read some of them, and I'm going to probably put them on the screen again for you. So Lakeisha was saying,
that is my soror. That is my sister soror.
Telling your truth can help others begin to heal.
Yeah, you guys keep telling me that.
Well, maybe some truth. Life is complicated. And she was saying it, Yolanda was saying this when you were saying it, Janice, that you were just talking about the complication, how life is complicated. But true, God can truly heal all wounds. And again, we don't know his timing. Sometimes it could take years. But I do believe that healing is always taking place when we're reaching out to him, whether we feel it or not. He's doing something on the inside of us. Yeah. And Diane, one of our team members, saying more than they can relate more than you know. So that's what I'm saying. You don't know. Everyone doesn't tell the dark, unsavory, sometimes not postable, not social media worthy.
Right.
Parts of your story. You never know what someone else is going through. So I'm telling you, you can tell by these comments, women tonight are relating to your story. And Deja said this is the generation of moms that covered for their sons. I believe that comes from how our men were treated in society.
I believe so. And I think just she and some of it, I think, is personality too. She and Ron just got along much better than she and I. And I told you a little bit about this too, Tanya, just the circumstances around my birth.
Mm-hmm. You can share, please.
It was just a little shameful to her. And there was some issues with her being unwed, pregnant, and what have you. And there was a lot of I felt sometimes resentment towards me because of it. But with my grandparents, I was at their house every weekend, just an associate pastor at our church. And so I went to church with him and my grandma all the time. I went to shout out to Second Baptist of Frankfort, Philadelphia.
Yes.
But I would go, and sometimes I felt like she didn't like that too much, because they didn't have that same kind of relationship with Ron.
Yeah.
Wow. And
yeah, so Iris is saying she has a very complicated situation right now as well. Like I said, it's just you never know. Reverend Martin said, "Thank you for the courage of being vulnerable to help others." And I think I loved your daughter's comment. I'm so proud to call this woman my mother. She broke the generational trauma when she raised me and my sister.
Yeah, so I got him out of there. I refused. And the thing is too, that, sometimes you don't realize that you're doing things that have been done to you. And
Ooh, yeah. And sometimes you feel like that's normal, right? That's the way I
right,
was raised. I'm just doing what I saw or I experienced done to me.
right,
I'm raising the same way that I was raised.
yeah,
Not knowing that that's dysfunction, not knowing that even maybe the childhood wounds, we talked about it last week as well, the childhood wounds that you experience that you're carrying into, you know, your relationship as being a mom. And we said it before, moms, we're just people who, you know, grown up and maybe had issues that had children, and we're still broken. Sometimes we're still
mm-hmm,
unhealed. We still have issues, but now we're having to raise other kids. And many times we are allowing those things to now
yeah,
impact our children. And like you
yeah,
said, the generational trauma that
Yeah.
at some point, and that's why we love this ministry, because we believe as moms that we have that influence to be able to change things in our family. If we can just educate and enlighten and change our thinking, we can help those next generations of those children that we're raising, whether our children are young or even old. We're not raising them anymore, but we still have that influence, and we still can teach and share. So that's why I love this ministry so much. But I see Deja says separation is a form of self-care. Yes, separation,
yes.
that boundary is so important.
And
Denise says
that's another
yes.
Dover Lumney Sorrel.
Yes, welcome. So the love from a distance for your own self-preservation, right? And boundaries is self-love, self-preservation, self-love, self-care, taking care of self. Yeah.
But I think that we as African Americans, sometimes we don't understand that that is okay. So, you know, loving from a distance, I was thought of as mean. Oh, she's so mean.
Standoffish, or you're better now because you don't
I'm
come around.
better
So
than
you're
you.
better.
Think you're so much better than us. You're so mean. You're so selfish. And then when I joined the army, okay, Sarge, you know, and it wasn't that. It was like, in order for my peace of mind, in order for me to raise these two girls and not snap, I can't have you around. I can't do it.
Yeah. And then I'm gonna hand over for the next question. Janice McCarran, I just wanted to read her comment. She said, "Your mom sounds like she had her own trauma wounds that never healed."
She did. She did. She really did. And you know, and it was difficult, I think, for her. To be raised. And I don't think she was protected like she should have been as well.
Yep. And, you know, as you were talking about the setting of the boundaries, right? I think one great thing that you kind of came up through you answering the last question is that implementing boundaries don't always feel good, right? Like, you know, boundary setting sounds great and it leads to a good place, but doing it initially, there is a grieving process that you go through as you are setting boundaries.
Especially with family. Especially with family.
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
And so it's really retraining your mind with that.
It really is. And it broke me a little bit because again, I was a single mom raising these two kids, and it was hard, you know, to ask my mom questions without being put down or made to feel less than. And so I created my own family. I created my own you know, I created my own village, my own circle. And I am a proponent of being part of, you know, people's villages and everything because of that. But it was very difficult. But I have to tell you, the day I got the keys to my apartment in Claymont, Delaware, I was so relieved to be out.
To be in your place, in your
my
space.
place, in my space. And you know, quite honestly, didn't have to let her come in there if I didn't want to.
Yeah.
He definitely wasn't coming. But, you know, because she was my mother and, you know, she was my girl's grandmother, my girls loved her. You know, there were some things that I did, but there were times too that it was difficult as well, where, you know, she would disrespect me in my home. And
now, sorry, Markisha. No, continue.
No.
What I was going to ask, you know, when we flash forward to the night that your brother passed away, can you just talk, right, a little bit about, obviously that impacted you, but can you explain maybe a little bit more in detail about how his death impacted you, the way he passed away, and kind of how it had, you know, how it hit you in that moment?
So with Ron, Ron was the circumstances around his death is still a little foggy. But the best thing that we know, the the best thing we can figure out is that he was over his, he had 2 children with a woman, and he was over her house, and he went to get some food for them, or if it was for them, or he was getting the food and then he was, going to come home. And he cut through a parking lot, a vacant lot from her house into where the Chinese store was. And the Chinese store was near the projects that were in the neighborhood. And he got into a fight with 2, maybe 3 young guys. And my brother Ron, y'all saw those pictures, did not look. He looks like a kid. So he was 26, but he looked like he was 18 or 19. And he got into it with them, and whether they tried to rob him or whatever, at the end of it, Ron was dead. And the Chinese food he had was gone. His pockets were inside out. And he laid there all night. And she didn't look for him. And I remember thinking, he ain't come back with my food. I'm looking. But he didn't come back. And it wasn't until a SEPTA worker was walking through the vacant lot to go home that he found Ron. And Ron, since he didn't have any identification on him, he laid in the morgue as a John Doe for a day and a half. And his identification came back because he had a record. He had a criminal record. I remember talking to my mom, and she was like, Ron didn't come home last night. And I was like, okay. What do you want me to do? That day it was my father's birthday. So I was actually more concerned with my father and talking to my dad and wishing him a happy birthday and what have you, than what Ron was doing. And I remember going about my day, but I had a splitting headache. And I saw people I hadn't seen in like forever. I saw a coworker that I hadn't seen in a long time. And I remember telling her how much I loved her. And then June 7th, it was June 7th, almost into the 8th. Yep, it was the 8th. I got a phone call, and it was my grandmother. And she told me what happened. And I told her to shut up. And I told her she didn't know what she was talking about and that she needed to stop it right now. And at the time I was dating a man, and he could hear in my voice the panic, the
something was wrong.
Yeah. And I remember him coming over and looking at me, and I passed out. And then I just went into my mode. I remember picking my girls up from school. At the time, they were at a Catholic school. I remember getting them. I remember calling a friend of mine, asking her if she could come to Philly with me. And then she wasn't able to. And then I also remember breaking down because I was like, this is horrible that somebody would murder a relative. Like, I felt dirty. I felt like I was disgusted. Like, I can't even believe. And I remember I was like grabbing at myself, like, why in the world would someone think that it would be okay to first break a man's leg because you shot him, then continue to shoot him until he was dead? And he had nothing. For what? Because he got the better of you. You proved your point. You took his Chinese food. I mean, what was that? So I remember fighting with that a lot. just the disgust and the anger and the shame of it, to say my brother was murdered. It was difficult to say to people, you know, because, you have obligations. Of course, your life gets disrupted. I can't do this because my brother was murdered. Like, that was a horrible thing to say. And for
Just
a
have
long
to say,
time,
to verbalize, right?
to verbalize that. And even afterward, years afterward, I was very reluctant to say that he was murdered. Very reluctant.
I mean, even remember when I got your story initially, your initial blog, I was like, Markisha, you didn't say how he died.
I didn't. No, and it's something I'm still not comfortable with. Yeah. It was a very brutal, senseless. Like, I could not figure it out. Couldn't. And that's me. I'm a scientist. It's got to make sense to me. And I couldn't make sense of it. And it drove me crazy. It bothered me so badly. So badly.
But even through what you were experiencing, something turned on in you, right? So talk about what you did next, like taking care of everything, like kind of just stepping in the gear. Talk about how you still, despite everything that you went through, how you honored your brother.
So my mother was inconsolable. She couldn't do anything. And in fact, she started a whole downward spiral that mentally, physically, emotionally, that lasted until the day she died. And I knew she wasn't going to be able to take care of anything. And so I went into mode. I called the funeral director that has handled my family for generations. I called them immediately. I called the coroner to find out, because the police detectives had come to my mother's house to give her the death notification. And they had given her the information as to where he was. And so I knew she was not going to be able to go and identify her son. And I can still see the picture. My father and I went, and they showed us his picture, and it was him. And I remember thinking, I want him out of here. I want him out of here today, because I didn't want anybody to think that this John Doe number, whatever they had given him, that he wasn't somebody's son, somebody's brother, somebody's cousin, somebody's uncle, somebody's father. At that time, he had 3 kids, and he was not going to stay there a moment longer. And so I got him out of there. My next phone call was to the funeral home, and they got him out of there, and they got him quick, and they gave me a call. And what was crazy is that when people had found out on the street, his street name was Brooklyn. And so when people found out that Brooklyn was gone, I was knocking on the door to my mom's house, and I was sitting there, and they didn't know he had a sister. They didn't know who I was sitting there. And so they would say things, not realizing who I was. And so a lot of them had offered, Miss Marsha, we can help you do this. Let's do the arrangements for you. We can do this. We can take that. And I remember saying, no, I have it. And I remember them looking at me. This one guy, he was looking at me like, who are you? And my mother was like, this is my daughter. And I handled the arrangements. I picked out the casket. I decided to place him next to my that was something in itself, getting him the spot where his parents were, where my grandparents were, actually getting him next to them. Everything, his clothes, all of it. And she cussed me out every step of the way. Nothing I did was right. I remember some people because at the time she was taking care of his youngest daughter, and so we had to get her, and her teachers wanted to talk to her, but she was in the car. So I had gone out because my niece was playing. She was at recess, and I had gone out to pick her up. If we had a day, we were running around, and she threw a fit, a whole fit. She didn't want to talk to him. And I remember thinking, Mom, they just want to tell you how sorry they are. They just want to.
They're sorry.
Screamed and hollered and called me everything but a child of God. And that's what it was, constantly putting the obituary together. She screamed and hollered at me. She pointed out the grammatical errors. She pointed out this. She pointed out that. I would literally sit in my car before I went in her house, and I would have to pray. I would have to get my mind right, because I was like, I can't go in here. Like, there were so many times where I was like, forget her son. She can figure it out herself. If that's what she's going to do, if that's how she's going to talk to me, I'm not doing it. I can't do it. And that still voice was like, you can't leave her like this. You can't let her go through this by herself. You can't. You simply cannot. So I did it, and I got through it. And I remember she had to, because she was on the insurance and everything, she had to go in and tell the director everything was fine. And I remember fighting with her to do that. Like, Mom, just go in there, look at him, come back out, And to the point where I told her, I said, I will knock you upside your head if you don't go in there and get this done right now. Because it was like dealing with a toddler. Mm-hmm. It was like dealing with a toddler. It was,
and that was her own grieving. You know what I mean? That was her own grieving process and how she was dealing with what she was feeling.
Right. But I hated that in her grieving process, she still found time to belittle me,
to berate you,
to berate me, and to tell me how worthless I was. You don't listen to anything. What's wrong with you? Why don't you pay attention? It was disheartening. It was difficult. It was difficult.
Markisha, I want to read. We thank Karen. She is we call her professional extraordinary, especially some of these difficult topics. So she has a couple. I just want to take time to read. She said that intimate partner violence not only refers to sexual relationships, but also sibling and relational. Mother wounds and trauma that go unresolved, in addition to mental health issues, show up in various ways and are masked, often by love. I pray your healing continues and that you seek and find support that can holistically continue to provide you the healing and provide the space for others who have experienced the energy of your trauma to heal as well.
Yeah. It's a constant journey. And I'd be lying to say if I said that it was, oh yeah, I got through it, whatever. But Ron died in 2007, 17 years it's taken me to get to this point. And in that time, my mother lived another 7 years after that until she passed away. And it wasn't until after she died that my healing really started. But I will say honestly, Tanya, that you were the one that pointed out that I never got an apology. And I hadn't really realized that because at that point, they were both gone. And what am I going to do? What am I going to do?
Forgive anyway. You can.
That's all you can do. Right? Exactly.
I've seen that. I've seen people say, like, put a chair there, put his picture in one chair, put her picture in another chair, and forgive them. And whatever did you have to say to them, say it to them. Forgive them,
and move on.
Yeah, move on.
Yeah, that's all you can do.
Yeah. One more comment from Karen. It says, as a trauma, loss, and grief facilitator, we do not allow individuals to be re-traumatized. by having to quantify loss. Loss is loss. You do not have to quantify or clarify how your brother transitioned unless it is mutually beneficial for telling. Great point, Karen. Thank you so much just for sharing it. And I see Iris said, so familiar. My mother was most abusive to me, but I was the oldest and the one to take care of her.
I did, and I did the same. I took care of her. I paid bills. I've paid, you know, there were many times that, that's my president, Miss Wanda Davis. There were times that I had to help her out financially, which was crazy because when I needed her help financially after Ron died, she refused. She told me that I only talked to her when I needed something. She didn't realize that I had separated myself to save myself. You know, I only called her when I needed something. And that hurt. And as a result, it was, you know, I lost some things. Like I had a storage locker that I had, and I lost a lot of things from my childhood, from my kids' early childhood, you know, stuff like that. But they're material things. They're fine. I don't even miss them. But I always thought it was like a slap in the face, you know, everything I did for her. It just never seemed like it was enough. Never seemed like it was enough. But I took care of her because love, you know, that's what we do. It's what we do. It's how we take care of each other. And, you know, I needed them both to know and understand that even though they put me through this, even though our relationships weren't the greatest, I still loved them. They were me. They were a part of me. And I was telling you, I think there's that picture where it's the three of us in there, the Kmart pictures, Kmart Easter pictures.
Yeah.
I'm the only one. I had a very hard time looking at that picture because I was the only one that's still alive in that picture. But a very dear friend of mine, her name is Bronte, and I really hope she's watching tonight. When my mother died, she called me, and I told her, I can't even look at this picture. And she said, you know, well, it's because it was about you the entire time. Because if it was her, if it was my mom, she wouldn't have been able to bury me and Ron. And if it was Ron, he wouldn't have been able to bury me and my mom.
Wow, what insight.
And so that even though I went through, and she knew how complicated my relationship was with them, that even though it went down the way it did with us, I was the one that was going to take care of it.
God knew best, right? God knew best. Wow.
Yeah.
I have to say a little bit light. She said, don't forget she threw a penny at me this morning, Mom.
She did. And I told her, I said, because my mother would always say, find a penny, pick it up all the days you'll have good luck. And so whenever we see pennies, we say it's grandma. I said, yeah, because she knows I'm getting ready to blow the lid off of this thing. That's why she's doing that.
But still being able to even honor her through this story, you know, nothing disparaging said, just your truth. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Through that. And I'm looking at the time, we have about 7 minutes left, but I want to ask you in closing, throughout this painful story, what is the lesson that you want to leave with our viewers tonight? Like through everything you've been through, what have you learned? And what is the lesson that you really want to impart to those listening to your story tonight?
I have to, you know what Jeanette King just said, love is unconditional. I did what I did because they were my mom and my brother Ron at the end of the day, and nothing less but the best for the two of them, you know, point blank, period. It didn't matter what they did. It didn't matter what they said. It didn't matter how they made me feel. I was going to make sure that they were both honored and they were both respected when they went on to their glory. I would not have been the daughter and sister that I was if I had not. And I couldn't live with myself if I did anything otherwise.
You were who you were, right?
Exactly.
Regardless of how you were treated, it did not change you being you.
Not at all. Not at all. They got what they got because they were mine. They belonged to me. They were my mom and they were my brother. You know, we didn't have the best relationship, but they didn't belong to anybody else but me.
They're yours. Yeah. Wow.
That's amazing. So I just want to say, Markisha, thank you. Because this was
running.
Amazing. You got through. And not only about that, but I mean, I think really, again, some things that we're walking away with from here is being able to not be ashamed of our complex relationships.
Or story, our complex story, right? And our complex history.
At all. That complexity is okay. And even in the midst of the chaos, the complexity and the layers, God is still using us.
Absolutely.
Just no other word.
It was nothing but God and his
Yes.
love and unconditional love for me that I was able to do it. And I was telling you, Tanya, that for me, it was, I remember learning this as a little girl in Sunday school. Honor thy mother and father, and thy days will be long. And that's really, truly what got me through it. Why, part of why I did what I did for her when Ron died, because I knew she couldn't do it. Yeah. I knew she couldn't do it and it wouldn't get done otherwise. But I had to honor her. I was her daughter. And that is what I had to do.
Appreciate
Absolutely.
it. For everyone else, again, we always want to remind you that please visit our website, sign up for our blog to make sure that you can be added to our subscription list so that everything comes right to your email. We want to thank you for joining us tonight. Thank you, everyone who tuned in, commented, who's going to watch later and share. Tanya, thank you again for creating this platform. Markisha, thank you so much for coming tonight. For everyone who's watching, have a very great evening. May God continue to bless you and never be afraid to share your story. Thank you so much.
Janice as well, just a reminder, this will be all month. So next week, we welcome Fatima Lewis, who shares about losing her brother, and she was 17. So even a different type of story, losing a sibling as a child or teenager, and then even going through life and dealing with all of those things that resulted as well. So it's just a different viewpoint as a child. But we have just, again, powerful stories. Each of our guests, please come back and join us. We appreciate you being here, and we look forward to seeing you next week. Thank you so much. Have a wonderful evening.